The universe whispers its deepest secrets in frequencies so ancient that they predate the formation of galaxies themselves. High above the Chilean Atacama Desert, where the air is so thin that breathing requires conscious effort, and the night sky reveals its full majesty undimmed by atmospheric interference. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted the final calibration settings on the most sensitive radio telescope array ever constructed by human hands. The Kronos Observatory represented humanity's most ambitious attempt to peer into the cosmic microwave background, that faint afterglow of the Big Bang that permeates every cubic centimeter of space like a fossilized memory of creation itself. For 3 years, Elena had been searching for anomalies in this ancient radiation, hoping to detect primordial gravitational waves or perhaps evidence of cosmic inflation patterns that might unlock the universe's earliest moments. What she discovered instead would shatter our understanding of time itself. At 3:47 a.m. local time, as the Milky Way stretched across the desert sky in a brilliant arc of starlight, the array's quantum sensors detected something impossible. Buried within the cosmic microwave background's uniform temperature of 2.7 Kelvin above absolute zero, a signal emerged that shouldn't exist. The transmission wasn't random noise or natural cosmic phenomena, it was structured, deliberate, and unlike anything in the known electromagnetic spectrum. Elena's fingers moved with practiced precision across the holographic interface, isolating the signal from the background radiation. The pattern was complex, layered with mathematical harmonics that suggested intelligence, but its origin point defied every principle of cosmology. According to the data streaming across her displays, the transmission was coming from coordinates that corresponded to Earth's location in space, but the signal's temporal signature was wrong, catastrophically wrong. The physics were clear and undeniable. This signal had originated approximately 127 years in the future. As dawn approached over the Atacama, Elena worked feverishly to decode the transmission. The signal employed a modulation technique based on quantum entanglement principles that wouldn't be discovered by human science for decades, yet somehow her equipment was receiving and processing the data. The message began with a sequence she recognized immediately, the first 1,000 digits of pi, followed by fundamental physical constants, then the mathematical proof of Fermat's last theorem. It was unmistakably the work of human intelligence, but human intelligence armed with technologies that transcended current scientific understanding. What followed in the transmission made Elena's hands tremble as she worked. Detailed blueprints for fusion reactors that operated at room temperature. Schematics for spacecraft propulsion systems that manipulated space-time itself. Medical technologies that could repair cellular damage at the quantum level. Each design was accompanied by mathematical proofs so elegant and complete that Elena could verify their theoretical validity, even though the practical applications lay far beyond humanity's current capabilities. But it was the message's header that sent ice through her veins. Embedded in the signal's carrier wave was a timestamp that read, "Transmitted from Earth-coordinated time, March 15, 2149. Recipient, Dr. Elena Vasquez, Kronos Observatory, March 15, 2022. Priority, species, survival, critical." The implications crashed over Elena like a tsunami of impossibility. Someone in humanity's future had deliberately transmitted this information backward through time, encoding it within the cosmic microwave background itself, the universe's most ancient and ubiquitous radiation. They had used the Big Bang's afterglow as a communication medium, turning the very fabric of space-time into a cosmic postal system that could carry messages across centuries. As the Chilean sun painted the desert mountains in shades of copper and gold, Elena began the delicate process of verifying her discovery. She ran the data through every error-checking protocol known to science, searched for equipment malfunctions, considered the possibility of an elaborate hoax. But the evidence was irrefutable, the signal was genuine, the physics were sound, and the technological blueprints could be verified through quantum mechanical calculations that her computer systems performed flawlessly. The greatest mystery was how her equipment could even receive such an advanced transmission. As Elena examined her instruments more closely, she made another unsettling discovery. 3 key components of her radio telescope array had been upgraded 6 months earlier by a contractor whose company records had mysteriously disappeared from all databases. The upgrades were subtle but crucial, quantum receivers that shouldn't have been possible to manufacture with current technology, yet there they were, functioning perfectly and enabling her to detect signals from the future. Elena's scientific training warred with the evidence before her eyes. Every principle of causality she had learned suggested that information could not travel backward through time without creating paradoxes that would unravel the fabric of reality itself. Yet here was proof that causality had already been violated on a cosmic scale. The universe's most fundamental law, that effect must follow cause, had been broken, and humanity's future self was reaching back through time to alter the past. As she prepared to transmit her findings to the international scientific community, Elena noticed one final detail that made her blood run cold. The transmission wasn't a one-time event. It was ongoing, continuous, part of a vast data stream that had been broadcasting from Earth's future for decades. Her discovery was just the beginning. Humanity had been receiving messages from tomorrow for years, hidden in plain sight within the cosmic background radiation that surrounded every living thing in the universe. The morning light revealed a world that looked exactly as it had the day before, but Elena knew that everything had changed. Somewhere in humanity's future, time travelers walked among the stars, and they had already begun their work in our present. The question that would haunt her in the days to come was simple, yet terrifying. If causality could be broken, what else? From the future was already here, walking among us, reshaping our reality in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. As Elena composed her initial report to the European Space Agency, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, not by human eyes, but by temporal observers from a time that hadn't yet come to pass, monitoring her discovery with the patience of those who had already seen how this story would unfold across the centuries ahead. Light carries memory across the cosmos, each photon a messenger that has traveled millions of years through the void to reach our instruments. In the pristine vacuum of space, 550 kilometers above Earth's surface, the Kepler Space Telescope had spent over a decade studying the subtle dimming of distant stars as planets passed before them. But in the weeks following Dr. Elena Vasquez's discovery at the Kronos Observatory, Kepler began detecting something that challenged our understanding of light itself. Dr. Marcus Chen, lead photometric analyst at NASA's Ames Research Center, first noticed the anomalies during routine data processing of observations from the Cygnus constellation. The telescope's ultra-sensitive CCD cameras had captured light from a galaxy designated as NGC 6946, located approximately 25 million light-years from Earth. The photons reaching Kepler's sensors had begun their journey during the Oligocene epoch, when Earth's continents were still shifting toward their modern positions and the first grasses were beginning to spread across the planet's surface. Yet somehow, impossibly, these ancient photons carried information about events that were scheduled to occur in humanity's future. The first sign of the temporal anomaly appeared as minute fluctuations in the galaxy's luminosity profile. Standard astrophysical models predicted that NGC 6946 should emit light in consistent spectral patterns based on its stellar composition and age. Instead, Kepler detected periodic brightness variations that corresponded to no known astronomical phenomenon. The variations weren't random. They followed complex mathematical sequences that suggested deliberate modulation of the galaxy's electromagnetic output. Marcus worked through the night in his laboratory at Ames, his screens filled with spectral analysis data that defied conventional physics. The anomalous light patterns weren't confined to a single wavelength. They appeared across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, from radio waves to gamma rays, synchronized with a precision that implied conscious control over stellar processes on a galactic scale. Whatever was creating these patterns possessed technology capable of manipulating the nuclear fusion reactions of billions of stars simultaneously. As dawn broke over Silicon Valley, Marcus made his first breakthrough in decoding the temporal signatures. The light variations weren't encoding information in their intensity alone. They were modulating the quantum states of individual photons. Each particle of light carried quantum information that existed in superposition, containing data about multiple possible futures simultaneously. When Marcus applied quantum error correction algorithms originally developed for quantum computing, the hidden message began to emerge. The revelation was staggering. The modulated starlight contained detailed astronomical observations of our solar system, but the data described celestial mechanics that wouldn't occur for centuries. Planetary alignments scheduled for the year 2847, solar flare cycles that wouldn't begin until 2156, the precise orbital parameters of asteroids that hadn't yet been discovered by human telescopes. The intelligence behind these signals possessed knowledge of our future, with mathematical precision extending hundreds of years ahead. But NGC 6946 wasn't alone. As Marcus expanded his analysis to other galaxies in Kepler's database, he discovered that the temporal light anomalies were widespread throughout the observable universe. Galaxy clusters, millions of light-years apart, were participating in a coordinated information exchange, their collective stellar output modulated to carry messages across cosmic distances and temporal boundaries. The universe itself had become a vast communication network operated by civilizations that had mastered time. The technical sophistication required for such an undertaking defied human comprehension. To modulate the light output of entire galaxies, these temporal civilizations would need to control stellar evolution processes on scales that dwarfed the energy output of Earth's sun by factors of trillions. They were manipulating the life cycles of stars themselves, timing supernovae explosions and stellar formations to create lighthouse beacons that could broadcast information across the cosmos for millions of years. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Kepler's chief mission scientist, arrived at Ames as Marcus was compiling his preliminary report. Together, they traced the temporal signatures back to their sources, mapping a three-dimensional network of galaxies that spanned nearly 1 billion light-years. The pattern that emerged was breathtakingly elegant, a cosmic web of intelligence that used the fundamental structure of the universe as its communication infrastructure. The most unsettling discovery came when Marcus analyzed the signal timing. The temporal information wasn't being broadcast randomly into space. It was being precisely aimed at specific coordinates that corresponded to Earth's location at specific points in our planet's orbital history. The signals had been transmitted millions of years ago, but they were timed to arrive at Earth during the exact decades when humanity would develop the technology to detect and decode them. This meant that advanced civilizations scattered across the cosmos had somehow predicted humanity's technological development timeline with extraordinary accuracy. They had known millions of years in advance that a species on a small rocky planet in the Milky Way's outer spiral arm would eventually build instruments capable of receiving their temporal transmissions. The implications suggested that human Technological evolution wasn't random, it was following a predetermined path that had been observed and catalogued by cosmic intelligences operating across vast scales of time and space. As the weekend approached, Marcus and Sarah worked continuously to verify their findings. They discovered that the temporal light signatures contained embedded coordinates pointing to specific locations throughout the galaxy. Many of these coordinates corresponded to star systems where the Kepler telescope had previously detected potentially habitable exoplanets. The temporal civilizations weren't just communicating, they were providing a roadmap to worlds where intelligent life might exist or emerge in the future. The final piece of the puzzle came when Marcus applied advanced pattern recognition algorithms to the quantum-encoded starlight data. Hidden within the temporal signatures was a three-dimensional map of space-time itself, showing how gravitational fields and quantum fluctuations would evolve throughout our local galactic neighborhood over the next several millennia. The map revealed something that made both scientists question everything they thought they knew about the universe's structure. Scattered throughout the cosmic web of temporal communication were nodes of intense space-time distortion, regions where the normal flow of time appeared to be artificially manipulated. These temporal anchors were positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy, creating a vast network of time manipulation infrastructure that spanned thousands of light years. The civilizations responsible for the temporal light signals hadn't just mastered time travel, they had constructed a galactic-scale apparatus for controlling the flow of time itself. As Marcus prepared to transmit his findings to the international astrophysics community, one final detail caught his attention. The temporal signatures weren't static, they were evolving in real time, updating their information content as the future they described approached. The Cosmic Intelligence Network was actively monitoring the progression of time, adjusting their transmissions based on changes in the timeline they were observing. Somewhere among the billions of stars whose light carried these impossible messages, temporal observers were watching humanity's present unfold, comparing it to the futures they had already seen and making subtle corrections to ensure that reality followed the path they had mapped across the centuries. The universe wasn't just alive with intelligence, it was under active management by beings who existed outside the normal constraints of time, shepherding the development of countless civilizations across cosmic distances that staggered human imagination. 100 meters beneath the rolling hills of the Swiss-French border, where the ancient Alps meet the Jura Mountains, humanity's most ambitious scientific instrument hums with the power of 13,000 superconducting magnets cooled to temperatures colder than the vacuum of deep space. The Large Hadron Collider at CERN stretches 27 kilometers in circumference, an underground cathedral of science where protons race through evacuated tubes at 99.99991% the speed of light, recreating conditions that existed mere moments after the Big Bang itself. Dr. Amélie Rousseau descended into this subterranean realm of particle physics with the familiar weight of anticipation that accompanied each experimental run. As CERN's lead quantum field theorist, she had spent 15 years studying the fundamental forces that bind reality together at the smallest scales imaginable. But in the 3 weeks since Dr. Elena Vasquez's discovery of temporal signals in the cosmic microwave background, the Large Hadron Collider had begun producing results that challenged the very foundations of causality. The first anomaly appeared. During a routine proton collision experiment at beam energy 6.5 TeV, the Atlas detector, a 7,000-ton instrument designed to capture the fleeting signatures of subatomic particles, recorded something unprecedented. Among the shower of quarks, leptons, and bosons created by the high-energy collision was a particle that shouldn't exist, a muon that registered on the detector's sensors 17 nanoseconds before the collision that created it actually occurred. Amélie stood in the Atlas control room, surrounded by banks of monitors displaying real-time data from the collision chamber. The impossibility of the temporal displacement was confirmed by atomic clocks synchronized to GPS satellites, quantum timing, systems accurate to within attoseconds, and redundant detection arrays that eliminated any possibility of measurement error. The particle had demonstrably existed before its moment of creation, violating the principle of causality that formed the bedrock of modern physics. But this was only the beginning of CERN's descent into temporal paradox. As Amelie expanded her analysis to include data from the facility's other detector systems, CMS, LHCb, and ALICE, a pattern of chronological impossibilities began to emerge. Particles were exhibiting what she termed temporal superposition, existing in quantum states that contained information about their own future interactions. A photon created in one collision would carry the energy signature of a second collision that wouldn't occur until minutes later. Quarks displayed spin orientations that corresponded to magnetic fields that hadn't yet been generated. The quantum mechanics of the situation defied every theoretical framework known to science. According to the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, particles existed in probabilistic superposition until the moment of observation collapsed them into definite states. But CERN's particle detectors were recording quantum states that had already been collapsed by observations that existed in the future. It was as if the universe's timeline was becoming entangled with itself, creating feedback loops that allowed information to flow backward through time. Dr. Henrik Larsen, CERN's chief accelerator physicist, joined Amelie in the underground control complex as the facility prepared for its next experimental run. Together, they monitored the superconducting radio frequency cavities that accelerated protons to relativistic speeds, watching as electromagnetic fields powerful enough to strip electrons from atoms guided particle beams through the collider's circular path. The energy densities involved in their experiments approached those found in the cores of neutron stars, yet somehow these extreme conditions were creating doorways through time itself. The breakthrough came when Amelie analyzed the quantum field, fluctuations in the vacuum chambers where particle collisions occurred. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle dictated that even empty space should contain virtual particles popping in and out of existence on timescales shorter than measurement could detect. But the LHC's vacuum chambers were displaying virtual particle activity that correlated with real particle collisions scheduled to occur hours in the future. The quantum foam of space-time itself was becoming temporally entangled, creating what Amelie termed causal loops, where effect preceded cause in an endless cycle of temporal recursion. As midnight approached in the Alps above, Amelie made a decision that would alter the course of human understanding. She instructed the accelerator control systems to initiate a high-luminosity collision sequence, pushing the LHC to its maximum design energy of 14 TeV per beam. The electromagnetic fields generated by this experiment would be powerful enough to probe the structure of spacetime at the Planck scale, where quantum mechanics and general relativity merged into a single theoretical framework that human science had not yet fully comprehended. The results exceeded every prediction. At maximum energy, the particle collisions began producing exotic matter that existed in states of temporal flux. Particles were observed to age backward, their decay products reassembling into their original forms before spontaneously disintegrating again in cycles that repeated with mechanical precision. The detector arrays recorded the creation of micro black holes that evaporated through Hawking radiation in mere attoseconds, but the information content of that radiation contained detailed descriptions of events that wouldn't occur until the following day. But it was the security surveillance, footage that transformed scientific wonder into existential dread. CERN's comprehensive monitoring system designed to track every movement within the facility's restricted areas, began recording anomalous activity throughout the underground complex. Figures appeared on thermal imaging cameras as cold spots, moving through corridors where no authorized personnel were scheduled. Motion detectors triggered in empty rooms, recording movement patterns that suggested human locomotion but left no corresponding heat signatures or electromagnetic traces. The mysterious figures seemed to understand the facility's layout with impossible precision, navigating directly to critical control systems and experimental chambers without hesitation. When security teams investigated these locations, they found subtle modifications to quantum detection equipment, upgrades that improved the instrument's temporal resolution by orders of magnitude. The modifications employed materials and manufacturing techniques that wouldn't be developed by human science for decades, yet there they were, seamlessly integrated into CERN's most sensitive instruments. Amelie watched the security footage with growing unease as the temporal figures moved through the facility like ghosts made of advanced physics. They cast no shadows under infrared illumination, left no fingerprints on surfaces they touched, and seemed to exist in a state of quantum superposition that made direct observation impossible. When security cameras focused directly on their locations, the figures would phase out of visible existence, becoming probability waves that could only be detected through their interactions with the facility's quantum field sensors. The most disturbing discovery came when Amelie cross-referenced the timing of these apparitions with the LHC's experimental schedule. The temporal figures appeared most frequently during high-energy collision sequences, as if the extreme conditions were providing them with doorways into our timeline. They seemed to be using humanity's most advanced scientific instrument as a temporal transit system, stepping through quantum field distortions to access our present from some unimaginable future. As dawn broke over the Swiss countryside, casting long shadows across the research facility that concealed one of humanity's greatest technological achievements, Amelie compiled her findings into a classified report that would forever change our understanding of the universe's structure. The Large Hadron Collider hadn't just discovered the mechanism behind temporal paradox, it had become a gateway for time travelers who possessed mastery over the fundamental forces of reality itself. The figures moving through CERN's corridors weren't simply observing human scientific progress. They were actively modifying our experimental equipment, enhancing our ability to detect temporal anomalies and guiding our research toward discoveries that would serve their mysterious agenda. Humanity's journey into the deepest mysteries of physics had attracted the attention of intelligences that existed outside the normal flow of time, and they were using our own technology to reshape our understanding of the universe according to their incomprehensible design. In the rust-colored silence of Jezero crater, where ancient river deltas once carried sediment across a world that knew flowing water 3.5 billion years ago, the Perseverance rover methodically analyzed soil samples with the precision of a robotic archaeologist. Mars had surrendered many secrets since humanity first began exploring its desolate surface, but nothing had prepared the scientific community for what lay buried beneath the oxidized regolith of the red planet's forgotten landscapes. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead xenoarchaeologist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, watched the real-time data stream from Mars with the patient intensity of someone accustomed to waiting months for answers to questions posed across the void of interplanetary space. The 11-minute communication delay between Earth and Mars meant that every command sent to Perseverance was an act of faith, trusting that the rover's sophisticated AI systems would navigate the complexities of an alien world according to programming, created by minds that had never walked beneath foreign skies. The first anomalous readings appeared during Sol 147 of the mission, as Perseverance conducted ground-penetrating radar scans, near the remnants of what had once been a vast river delta. The radar pulses, designed to map subsurface geology and search for signs of ancient microbial life, detected geometric patterns buried 3 meters beneath the Martian surface. The shapes were too regular to be natural formations: straight lines, perfect circles, and angular structures that suggested artificial construction by some form of intelligence. Sarah coordinated with mission controllers to redirect Perseverance toward the anomalous site, a decision that required approval from NASA administrators who understood that every sol spent on unexpected discoveries was time taken away from the rover's primary mission objectives. But the radar signatures were unlike anything previously detected on Mars, and the potential implications for astrobiology were too significant to ignore. If Mars had once hosted intelligent life, these buried structures could represent the first direct evidence of extraterrestrial civilization. The excavation process began with Perseverance's rock abrasion tool, slowly clearing away millennia of accumulated dust and debris with the methodical patience that defined all robotic exploration. As layers of oxidized material were removed, the rover's high-resolution cameras began transmitting images that defied every expectation. Her team had formed about Martian geology. Buried beneath the ancient sediments were objects that appeared to be manufactured rather than naturally formed: metallic fragments with smooth surfaces, crystalline structures that reflected sunlight in precisely geometric patterns, and what appeared to be components of some vast technological apparatus. But it was the isotopic analysis that transformed curiosity into bewilderment. Perseverance's suite of spectrometers could identify the atomic composition of materials by analyzing how different elements absorbed and emitted specific wavelengths of light. The buried artifacts contained isotopic ratios that matched Earth's atmospheric and geological signatures with impossible precision. The metallic fragments showed carbon-14 decay patterns consistent with materials that had been exposed to Earth's cosmic ray environment, while rare Earth elements displayed the exact isotopic fingerprints found in terrestrial industrial processes. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the mission's chief geochemist, joined Sarah in the JPL control room as they struggled to comprehend the implications of the data streaming back from Mars. The artifacts weren't just similar to Earth materials, they were Earth materials, transported somehow across 225 million kilometers of space and buried in Martian soil for time frames that extended millions of years into the past. The objects predated human civilization by vast margins, yet their isotopic signatures were unmistakably terrestrial. As Perseverance continued its careful excavation, the true scope of the buried site began to emerge. The rover had discovered what appeared to be the remains of a massive technological installation with components scattered across an area spanning several square kilometers. The debris field showed signs of catastrophic destruction, as if some enormous structure had been obliterated and its fragments buried by subsequent geological processes. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the wreckage yielded impossible results, ages that placed their origin in Earth's industrial era, despite being buried in Martian strata that formed millions of years before human civilization existed. The breakthrough came when Perseverance's laser spectrometer analyzed a partially buried cylindrical object that appeared to be some form of technological component. The device contained rare isotopes of plutonium that could only be created through nuclear fission processes, arranged in decay chains that indicated artificial enrichment using techniques developed by human science in the late 20th century. But radiometric dating placed the object's burial on Mars at approximately 2.3 million years before the present, during Earth's Pliocene epoch when early hominids were just beginning to use primitive stone tools. Sarah worked through the night, coordinating with research teams across multiple time zones as the implications of the discovery became clear. The artifacts on Mars weren't evidence of ancient alien civilization. They were remnants of human technology that had somehow been transported backward through time and scattered across the solar system. The debris field represented the fossilized remains of humanity's future, preserved in Martian geology like temporal fossils, waiting to be discovered by the very civilization that would eventually create them. The most unsettling revelation came when Perseverance's ground-penetrating radar mapped the complete extent of the buried installation. The technological debris wasn't randomly distributed. It formed a precise geometric pattern that corresponded to the layout of a massive space-time manipulation facility. The scattered components included what appeared to be fragments of temporal field generators, chronometer devices calibrated to measure time dilation effects, and the remnants of exotic matter containment systems designed to handle materials that existed in states of temporal flux. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose discovery of temporal signals in the cosmic microwave background had initiated humanity's awareness of time travel technology, joined the analysis team via secure video link from the Kronos Observatory. Together, the scientists began to reconstruct the purpose of the destroyed Martian facility. The evidence suggested that sometime in humanity's distant future, our species would develop the technology to manipulate time itself on planetary scales. The Mars installation had been a temporal research station conducting experiments that involved transporting matter backward through time. But something had gone catastrophically wrong. The debris patterns indicated that the facility had been destroyed in an event that released enormous quantities of temporal energy, scattering its components across millions of years of Martian geological history. The destruction had been so complete that only fragments remained, buried like archaeological layers in the planet's sedimentary record. Mars had become an accidental museum of human temporal technology, preserving evidence of experiments that wouldn't be conducted for millennia. As the Martian dawn cast long shadows across Jezero crater, Sarah made a discovery that would reshape humanity's understanding of its own destiny. Hidden within the debris field was a partially intact data storage device, its quantum memory cores protected by materials that could withstand millions of years of cosmic radiation and geological pressure. When Perseverance's computers interfaced with the device using communication protocols that the rover's AI had somehow learned to recognize, a message emerged from humanity's temporal future. The transmission contained detailed star charts showing the locations of habitable worlds throughout the galaxy, accompanied by mathematical proofs demonstrating how to construct faster-than-light propulsion systems and temporal manipulation devices. But most significantly, the message included precise coordinates for locations throughout Earth's solar system where similar temporal artifacts had been hidden, waiting to be discovered by a human civilization that was following a predetermined path of technological development. The realization struck Sarah with the force of cosmic revelation. Humanity's exploration of Mars hadn't been driven purely by scientific curiosity. The entire space program, from the first satellites to the Mars rovers, had been unconsciously guided toward these temporal artifact sites by information that had been planted in human culture millions of years in advance. Our species was following a timeline that had already been established by our own future descendants, discovering the tools and knowledge we would need to eventually become the time travelers who had created this temporal archaeological record. Mars held more than the fossilized remains of humanity's future. It contained a roadmap for human destiny itself, buried in ancient sediments and waiting for the precise moment when our civilization would be ready to begin its transformation into a species that could walk between the moments of time itself. In the subterranean chambers of Fort Meade, Maryland, where the National Security Agency processes 17 billion digital communications every 24 hours, a pattern began to emerge from the vast ocean of human conversation that flows through fiber optic cables spanning the globe. Deep learning algorithms designed to identify terrorist communications and state-sponsored cyber attacks instead detected something far more extraordinary: a network of individuals who consistently demonstrated knowledge of future events with mathematical precision that defied statistical probability. Commander Lisa Park, NSA's chief cryptanalyst, first noticed the anomalous communication patterns during routine analysis of encrypted data streams originating from major metropolitan areas worldwide. The intercepts appeared to be standard digital communications, email threads, encrypted messaging, and voice calls, but their content referenced specific events, stock market fluctuations, and geopolitical developments that wouldn't occur until days or weeks after the messages were transmitted. Initially, the intelligence community suspected a sophisticated insider trading network or perhaps a state-sponsored information warfare operation. But as Park's team expanded their analysis using quantum computing systems capable of processing encrypted communications in real time, they discovered that the network's predictive accuracy approached 100% across thousands of documented instances. These individuals weren't making educated guesses about future events. They possessed detailed foreknowledge of humanity's timeline with precision that suggested direct observation of yet-to-occur realities. The network operated under protocols that demonstrated operational security sophistication beyond any known intelligence organization. Communications were encrypted using quantum entanglement principles that wouldn't be practical for widespread deployment until the late 21st century, yet the technology was being employed by individuals whose official biographies showed no advanced scientific training. The encryption keys changed according to astronomical phenomena, solar flare intensities, pulsar rotation periods, and gravitational wave detection events, creating an unbreakable communication system that used the universe itself as a cryptographic foundation. Park worked through the Arctic Maryland winter, coordinating with intelligence agencies across NATO alliance nations as the true scope of the Temporal Observer Network became apparent. The organization wasn't confined to a single country or region. It operated as a global infrastructure with nodes in every major city and embedded assets within governmental, academic, and corporate institutions worldwide. Members of the network held positions ranging from university professors to financial analysts, from meteorologists to military contractors, each contributing specialized knowledge to a coordinated surveillance operation that monitored human civilization's development with the patience of entities operating on geological timescales. The breakthrough in understanding the network's structure came when Park's team attempted to trace the biographical histories of suspected temporal observers. Standard intelligence gathering techniques revealed identities that existed in multiple time periods simultaneously, creating paradoxes that shattered conventional understanding of human identity. A financial analyst in London whose communications demonstrated knowledge of market fluctuations that wouldn't occur for months showed photographic evidence of existing in that same profession during the 1970s, 1950s, and even the 1920s, appearing to age backward through historical records while maintaining the same occupation across decades of impossible longevity. Dr. James Morrison, a theoretical physicist at MIT, whose encrypted communications contained detailed descriptions of experiments that wouldn't be conducted at CERN for another 6 months, appeared in university faculty directories spanning the entire 20th century. His academic publications showed a consistent research focus on temporal mechanics across multiple generations, with papers published in 1923 discussing the same theoretical frameworks he was developing in 2022. Biometric analysis of historical photographs revealed identical facial structure, DNA markers, and even retinal patterns across a century of documented existence. The most unsettling discovery emerged when intelligence agencies attempted physical surveillance of suspected network members. Thermal imaging revealed individuals whose body temperatures fluctuated according to no known biological pattern, sometimes registering as cold as the surrounding environment while maintaining normal human behavior. Electromagnetic field detectors recorded anomalous readings around these individuals, suggesting they existed in states of temporal flux that created localized distortions in space-time itself. Agent Sarah Mitchell of the CIA's Special Activities Division led a covert surveillance operation targeting Dr. Morrison during a routine day at the MIT campus. Using advanced biometric sensors and quantum field detection equipment, her team discovered that Morrison cast no shadow during specific times of day that corresponded to precise astronomical alignments. When solar radiation struck him at certain angles, he became partially translucent, existing in a state of quantum superposition that made direct observation technically impossible through conventional means. The temporal observers seemed aware of surveillance attempts with uncanny precision, altering their movement patterns and communication schedules to avoid detection by methods they couldn't possibly have known about in advance. When intelligence agencies deployed new surveillance technologies, the network would modify its operational procedures days before the technologies were even activated, as if they possessed real-time intelligence about classified programs that existed only in the planning stages of governmental black projects. Commander Park's analysis revealed that the observers weren't simply monitoring human civilization, they were actively guiding its development through subtle interventions in key historical moments, financial markets, scientific research funding, political elections, and even individual career decisions showed statistical patterns suggesting external influence by entities with comprehensive knowledge of cause and effect relationships across extended timelines. Humanity's technological development, social evolution, and even cultural movements appeared to be following a predetermined path that had been established by observers who could see the entire trajectory of human history from beginning to end. The network's ultimate purpose became clear when Park's team intercepted a series of communications that contained detailed assessments of humanity's readiness for temporal integration. The messages discussed specific technological milestones that human civilization would need to achieve before it could safely interact with what the observers termed the temporal community, a galactic confederation of species that had mastered time travel and existed in a state of temporal coordination across multiple timelines simultaneously. The observers were evaluating humanity's progress toward joining this cosmic temporal network, monitoring our species' development of the scientific, understanding ethical frameworks and technological capabilities necessary to operate as responsible temporal citizens. Every major scientific breakthrough from quantum mechanics to space exploration was being assessed according to criteria that determined humanity's suitability for eventual inclusion in a universe-spanning civilization that existed outside the normal constraints of linear time. But the most profound revelation came when Park analyzed the observers' assessment criteria and realized that humanity was approaching critical thresholds faster than the temporal community had anticipated. The recent discoveries of time travel evidence, Elena Vasquez's temporal signals, Marcus Chen's quantum echoes in starlight, the CERN temporal paradoxes, and the Martian archaeological findings represented an acceleration of human awareness that was ahead of schedule according to the observers' original timeline projections. Emergency protocols were being activated within the temporal observer network, indicating that humanity's rapid advancement toward temporal awareness was creating instabilities in the carefully managed progression of our species' development. The observers were facing a scenario they hadn't fully prepared for, a human civilization that was discovering the existence of time travel before it had developed the wisdom and restraint necessary to use such knowledge responsibly. As winter storms battered the NSA facility at Fort Meade, Park compiled her findings into a classified report that would forever alter humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmic order. The Temporal Observer Network wasn't just monitoring human civilization, it was preparing for first contact with a species that was about to graduate from linear time into the vast temporal ecosystem where advanced civilizations shepherded the development of younger species across the infinite possibilities of space-time itself. Somewhere in humanity's near future, representatives of the temporal community were preparing to reveal themselves, ending millions of years of covert observation and initiating our species' transformation into beings capable of walking between the moments of eternity. The question that haunted Park as she finalized her analysis was whether humanity would prove worthy of such cosmic responsibility, or whether our premature discovery of time travel would necessitate more direct intervention by forces that had been patiently. In the vast expanse between Saturn's F and G rings, where billions of ice particles dance in gravitational harmony around the sixth planet from our Sun, something impossible had taken refuge among the cosmic debris. The Cassini spacecraft had concluded its mission years earlier, diving into Saturn's atmosphere in a final act of scientific sacrifice, but its legacy of discovery paled in comparison to what now hid within the ring system's ancient architecture, a vessel that existed outside the normal flow of time, carrying passengers who had witnessed the end of everything. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, lead astronomer at the Very Large Array Radio Telescope facility in New Mexico, first detected the anomalous signals during routine monitoring of Saturn's electromagnetic emissions. The ringed planet's natural radio waves, generated by interactions between solar wind and its magnetic field, had provided decades of scientific data about planetary magnetospheres. But embedded within these familiar patterns was something unprecedented: coherent transmissions that exhibited technological sophistication far beyond any human engineering capability, broadcasting on frequencies that required mastery of quantum field manipulation to generate. The signals weren't random bursts of electromagnetic energy, they were structured communications encoded with mathematical constants and physical laws that served as a universal translator between civilizations separated by vast gulfs of space and time. When Yuki applied advanced cryptographic analysis protocols to the transmissions, they resolved into messages that claimed to originate from representatives of humanity's far future, temporal refugees fleeing a cosmic catastrophe of unimaginable magnitude. The initial contact protocols followed procedures that demonstrated intimate knowledge of humanity's current technological capabilities and cultural frameworks. The temporal refugees transmitted detailed proofs of mathematical theorems that wouldn't be discovered by human science for centuries, alongside historical documentation that showed comprehensive knowledge of Earth's past extending back millions of years. Their credentials were impeccable and terrifying. They were indisputably human, but human in a form that had evolved beyond recognition across millennia of technological and biological advancement. Commander Sarah Mitchell recently transferred from CIA operations to lead the newly formed Temporal Contact Task Force, coordinated humanity's first official communication with representatives of our own species' future. The initial exchanges took place through quantum entanglement communication systems that the refugees had somehow constructed using technology salvaged from Saturn's ring particles, ice fragments that had been transformed into sophisticated quantum processors capable of maintaining coherent information states across interplanetary distances. The refugees' leader identified herself as Archive Keeper Zara 7739, a designation that indicated her role as a custodian of civilizational memory in a future where individual identity had been partially subordinated to collective consciousness networks. Through painstaking translation protocols, she revealed that the temporal vessel hidden in Saturn's rings contained the last surviving representatives of a galactic federation spanning millions of worlds, civilizations that had achieved technological transcendence but had been unable to prevent the cosmic disaster that was approaching their timeline. The catastrophe, as Zara 7739 described it, was a cascade failure in the fundamental structure of space-time itself. In humanity's far future, advanced civilizations had constructed vast networks of temporal manipulation devices throughout the galaxy, creating an infrastructure that allowed instantaneous communication and transportation across impossible distances by manipulating the flow of time itself. But these temporal networks had introduced instabilities into the fabric of reality, creating resonance patterns that would eventually cause space-time to collapse inward, like a cosmic singularity consuming everything that had ever existed. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose discovery of temporal signals had initiated humanity's awareness of time travel, joined the communication sessions from the Kronos Observatory. Together with theoretical physicists from institutions worldwide, she worked to understand the technical specifications of the approaching disaster. The temporal collapse would begin as localized space-time distortions in galaxy clusters approximately 50,000 years in the future, then propagate backward through time itself, unraveling the causal structure of the universe and erasing entire civilizations from existence retroactively. The refugees had fled their dying timeline using temporal displacement technology that allowed them to exist in a state of chronological exile, severed from their original temporal coordinates, but capable of inserting themselves into alternative timeline branches. Their ship was a marvel of engineering that transcended human comprehension, a vessel constructed from crystallized time itself, with hull materials that existed in quantum superposition across multiple temporal states simultaneously. Commander Mitchell coordinated with NASA and international space agencies to establish visual contact with the refugee vessel. The Hubble Space Telescope, redirected from its planned observations, focused on Saturn's ring system with maximum resolution enhancement. What it revealed defied every principle of physics and engineering known to human science. The temporal ship appeared as a structure of impossible geometry, existing partially within Saturn's rings while extending into dimensions that normal space couldn't contain. The vessel's architecture suggested construction by minds that had mastered the deepest laws of reality itself. Sections of the ship existed in temporal loops, continuously rebuilding themselves from quantum fluctuations in the vacuum of space. Other components phased in and out of visible existence according to patterns that corresponded to the orbital mechanics of distant galaxies, as if the ship's structural integrity was synchronized with cosmic forces operating on scales that spanned billions of light years. But it was the refugees' mission briefing that transformed wonder into existential dread. Zara 7739 transmitted detailed historical analyses showing that their presence in our current timeline was creating the very temporal instabilities that would eventually cascade into the galactic collapse they had fled. The refugee ship's temporal displacement technology was generating quantum field distortions that propagated both forward and backward through time, seeding the conditions necessary for the space-time resonance patterns that would destroy their original timeline. The temporal refugees found themselves trapped in a causal paradox of cosmic proportions. They had fled their dying future to prevent the disaster that destroyed their civilization, but their escape to the past was the event that would ultimately trigger that same destruction. Every action they took to alter the timeline created new temporal distortions that fed into the cascade failure they were trying to prevent. Dr. Marcus Chen, whose analysis of quantum echoes in starlight had revealed the galactic communication network of temporal civilizations, worked with the refugees to map the full extent of the temporal contamination. The displacement effects weren't confined to the immediate vicinity of Saturn. They were propagating throughout the solar system and beyond, creating temporal anomalies that would influence the development of countless civilizations across millions of years. The refugees' ship contained the preserved consciousness matrices of billions of beings from across the galaxy, digital archives that held the accumulated knowledge and cultural heritage of civilizations that spanned evolutionary timescales beyond human imagination. These entities existed in states of suspended animation within quantum storage systems, waiting for a solution to the temporal paradox that would allow them to resume existence in a stable timeline. As Earth's autumn gave way to winter, the full scope of the refugees' dilemma became clear. They possessed technologies capable of manipulating matter and energy on scales that dwarfed stellar engineering projects, yet they were powerless to escape the causal loop that bound them to the destruction of their own timeline. Every attempt to alter the past created new temporal distortions, and every effort to minimize their impact on our present strengthened the quantum resonances that would eventually tear space-time apart. The most disturbing revelation came when Zara 7739 transmitted detailed projections of how the temporal cascade would unfold. The collapse wouldn't begin in the far future. It would manifest first as increasing temporal anomalies in humanity's present era, gradually accelerating until reality itself became unstable. The recent discoveries of time travel evidence weren't just symptoms of temporal contact. They were early indicators of the space-time distortions that would eventually consume everything. But within this cosmic horror lay a glimmer of hope that would reshape humanity's understanding of its destiny. The refugees had identified a potential solution to the temporal paradox, a method that would require the cooperation of civilizations across multiple timelines and the construction of a galactic-scale temporal stabilization network. The project would transform humanity from a single-planet species into the coordinators of a cosmic engineering effort spanning millions of worlds and thousands of years. The future of existence itself depended on humanity's willingness to accept responsibility for managing the temporal stability of the entire galaxy, becoming the guardians of causality for. In the secure chambers beneath the United Nations headquarters in New York, where diplomats had once debated the fate of nations, representatives of humanity's greatest powers now gathered to wrestle with questions that transcended terrestrial politics entirely. The discovery of temporal refugees hidden in Saturn's rings had shattered the illusion that time flowed in only one direction, forcing world leaders to confront a reality where the future could be altered, the past could be rewritten, and the very concept of causality had become a battlefield upon which the survival of human civilization would be decided. Secretary-General Maria Santos presided over the emergency assembly with the weight of species-level responsibility pressing upon her shoulders. The classified briefings delivered by archive keeper Zara 7739 and the Temporal Refugee Collective had revealed that humanity stood at a critical juncture in its evolutionary timeline. Every decision made in the coming months would cascade through millennia of future history, determining whether our species would mature into wise guardians of temporal stability or trigger the cosmic collapse that had already consumed one version of our galaxy's far future. The international community had fractured into competing philosophical factions almost immediately after the full scope of the temporal crisis became known to world leaders. The Preservation Coalition, led by European Union representatives and supported by established scientific institutions, argued for minimal intervention in the timeline. They believed that humanity's best hope lay in allowing events to unfold naturally, while taking subtle precautions to prevent the specific technological developments that would eventually lead to space-time cascade failure. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as scientific advisor to the Preservation Coalition, presented her faction's analysis to the Assembly. Using quantum field equations derived from the temporal refugees' advanced physics, she demonstrated how even minor alterations to the current timeline could create unpredictable resonance effects that might accelerate rather than prevent the cosmic catastrophe. The Preservation Coalition advocated for a strategy of temporal quarantine, isolating humanity from further contact with time travelers while developing defensive technologies that could shield our timeline from external temporal interference. But opposing voices rose from the assembly floor with equal conviction and scientific backing. The Intervention Alliance, spearheaded by representatives from the United States, China, and emerging spacefaring nations, argued that passive preservation was tantamount to species suicide. They pointed to the temporal refugees' own testimony that conservative approaches had failed in their original timeline, leading to the very disaster they had fled across the centuries to escape. General Patricia Hayes, speaking for the Intervention Alliance, presented classified intelligence gathered by the Temporal Contact Task Force. The evidence showed that multiple factions of time travelers from various potential futures were already operating within the current timeline, each pursuing their own agenda for preventing or accelerating different versions of cosmic collapse. Humanity wasn't choosing between intervention and preservation. It was choosing which form of intervention would guide our species' development. The Alliance argued for proactive temporal engineering, using knowledge provided by the refugees to accelerate human technological development by centuries, transforming our species into a temporally capable civilization before the cosmic instabilities could reach critical thresholds. Their proposal involved constructing temporal stabilization networks throughout the solar system, essentially turning humanity into active participants in the galactic community of time-traveling civilizations rather than passive victims of temporal forces beyond our control. Dr. Marcus Chen, whose discovery of quantum echoes in starlight had revealed the cosmic temporal communication network, found himself caught between the competing factions as both sides sought to claim his research for their cause. His analysis of galactic temporal patterns suggested that the universe itself might be engaged in a vast experiment with causality, using countless civilizations as test subjects to determine which approaches to temporal technology could safely coexist with the fundamental laws of physics. The debate intensified when archive keeper Zara 7739 transmitted new intelligence through the quantum communication link with Saturn. The temporal refugees had detected the arrival of additional time travelers in Earth's vicinity, representatives from alternative future timelines where humanity had made different choices about temporal technology. These new arrivals weren't refugees fleeing disaster, but temporal warriors engaged in what they termed causality warfare, active combat between different versions of future humanity for control over the past that would determine which timeline would ultimately become reality. Commander Sarah Mitchell coordinated global intelligence efforts to track these temporal combatants, discovering that the causality wars were already being fought in the shadows of contemporary society. Financial markets, political elections, scientific research programs, and even individual career decisions were being influenced by competing temporal factions, each seeking to nudge current events toward their preferred version of future history. The key evidence of temporal warfare manifested in ways that challenged every assumption about free will and historical determinism. Stock market fluctuations that seemed random were actually the result of competing time travelers making strategic investments to fund research programs that would either accelerate or delay crucial technological breakthroughs. Political movements that appeared grassroots were being subtly guided by information warfare campaigns conducted by entities who knew exactly which cultural changes would lead to desired outcomes decades in the future. But it was the discovery of temporal weapons that transformed philosophical debate into existential terror. Deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational wave signatures indicating the deployment of chronoton-based armaments, devices that could erase events from the timeline by preventing their causal antecedents from ever occurring. Entire research facilities would suddenly find their funding withdrawn through bureaucratic decisions that retroactively eliminated the political conditions that had originally supported their establishment. The Preservation Coalition responded to these revelations by accelerating their efforts to shield humanity from temporal interference. Working with quantum physicists who had studied the temporal paradoxes at CERN, they began developing causal isolation technologies that could create temporal dead zones where the flow of time would be protected from external manipulation. Their ultimate goal was to preserve a core of unaltered human civilization that could serve as a temporal anchor point, maintaining the original timeline regardless of what changes the warring factions made to surrounding historical events. This intervention alliance countered by establishing covert partnerships with temporal refugee factions who offered advanced technologies in exchange for strategic support in the causality wars. These collaborations produced breakthrough developments in quantum computing, exotic matter physics, and space-time manipulation that advanced human science by centuries in mere months. But each technological leap created new temporal distortions that fed back into the cosmic instability the refugees had originally fled. Dr. Amélie Rousseau, whose research at CERN had first revealed the presence of temporal figures moving through our timeline, made a breakthrough discovery that would reshape the entire conflict. Her analysis of quantum field fluctuations at particle accelerator facilities worldwide revealed that the causality wars weren't random conflicts between competing futures. They were following a predetermined pattern that suggested the entire temporal conflict had been orchestrated by an intelligence operating on scales that transcended human comprehension. The revelation struck the International Assembly like a shockwave through space-time itself. The competing temporal factions weren't independent actors fighting for control of history. They were unwitting participants in a cosmic experiment conducted by entities whose understanding of time and causality operated on evolutionary timescales that spanned the birth and death of galaxies. Humanity's choice between preservation and intervention wasn't a real choice at all, but a carefully controlled variable in a research program that used entire civilizations as experimental subjects. As winter deepened around the United Nations headquarters, Secretary General Santos faced the most profound decision in human history. The evidence suggested that both the Preservation Coalition and the Intervention Alliance were being manipulated by temporal forces beyond their understanding, that the very concept of choice in the face of cosmic causality might be an illusion, created by minds operating on scales too vast for human comprehension. But within this revelation of cosmic manipulation lay a glimmer of hope that would unite the fractured factions and point humanity toward a third option that transcended both preservation and intervention. The temporal refugees had transmitted one final piece of intelligence that would change everything. The cosmic entities orchestrating the causality wars were themselves subject to temporal paradoxes, and their experiment with civilizational development could be disrupted by species that achieved sufficient understanding. In the pristine silence of space, where the Atacama Large Millimeter, Submillimeter Array spreads its 66 radio telescopes across the high desert plateau of Chile, humanity's most sensitive instruments for cosmic observation began detecting signals that rewrote our understanding of intelligence in the universe. At an altitude of 5,000 meters above sea level, where the thin atmosphere provides unparalleled clarity for astronomical observation, Dr. Kenji Nakamura monitored data streams that revealed the cosmos wasn't just teeming with life, it was alive, with temporal consciousness operating on scales that dwarfed human comprehension. The first indication of the cosmic temporal network appeared as synchronized fluctuations in the cosmic microwave background radiation detected simultaneously by radio telescope arrays across 6 continents. Unlike Dr. Elena Vasquez's earlier discovery of temporal signals at the Kronos Observatory, these weren't isolated transmissions from humanity's future. They were coordinated communications between thousands of civilizations scattered across the observable universe, using the fundamental structure of space-time itself as a communication medium that transcended the speed of light limitations governing conventional electromagnetic radiation. Kenji worked through the Southern Hemisphere's winter nights, analyzing spectral data that revealed temporal signatures embedded within the quantum fluctuations of empty space. The signals weren't traveling through normal space-time, they were propagating through what his team termed temporal channels, corridors through the fourth dimension where information could be transmitted instantaneously across cosmic distances by manipulating the flow of time itself. Civilizations separated by billions of light years were engaged in real-time conversations that had been ongoing for millions of years. The mathematical elegance of the temporal communication network defied human imagination. Each participating civilization contributed processing power to a galactic-scale computational matrix that used the gravitational fields of entire star systems as components in vast calculating engines. Black holes served as temporal anchors, their event horizons creating stable reference points where time flowed at predictable rates despite the relativistic distortions that would normally make synchronized communication impossible across cosmic distances. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now coordinating international temporal research efforts from the newly established Global Temporal Monitoring Center, worked with Kenji to map the three-dimensional structure of the cosmic communication web. Using data from radio telescope arrays in Australia, South Africa, and Puerto Rico, they discovered that the temporal network followed the same large-scale structure as the universe's matter distribution, galaxy clusters connected by filaments of dark matter that had been converted into conduits for temporal information exchange. The scale of the undertaking suggested civilizations that had achieved mastery over fundamental forces operating at the level of cosmic architecture. Entire galaxies had been transformed into components of the temporal communication infrastructure, their billions of stars synchronized to create coherent temporal fields that could maintain stable time flows across distances that spanned significant fractions of the observable universe. The network represented an engineering project that had required the coordinated effort of countless species across evolutionary timescales measured in billions of years. But it was the discovery of Earth's position within this cosmic web that transformed wonder into existential responsibility. The solar system wasn't randomly located within the temporal network. It occupied a crucial nexus point where multiple temporal communication channels intersected. Humanity's home system served as a natural amplification node that could influence the flow of temporal information throughout a significant portion of the galactic communication matrix. Archive Keeper Zara 7739, communicating from the temporal refugee vessel hidden in Saturn's rings, transmitted additional intelligence that revealed the true significance of Earth's cosmic position. The intersection of temporal channels at our solar system's location meant that decisions made by human civilization would be automatically transmitted throughout the galactic network, influencing the development of countless other species across vast expanses of space and time. The temporal refugees analysis showed that humanity's recent discoveries of time travel technology had already begun sending ripples through the cosmic web. Civilizations thousands of light years away were detecting the temporal disturbances created by CERN's particle accelerator experiments, the quantum echoes generated by humanity's expanding awareness of temporal mechanics, and the space-time distortions caused by the refugees' own presence in our timeline. Dr. Marcus Chen, working with quantum physicists at institutions worldwide, made a breakthrough discovery that revealed the cosmic web's true purpose. The temporal communication network wasn't just facilitating conversations between advanced civilizations, it was serving as an immune system for the universe itself, allowing temporally capable species to coordinate their responses to threats that could potentially unravel the causal structure of reality on cosmic scales. The universe had evolved its own defense mechanisms against the kind of temporal cascade failures that had driven the refugees to flee their original timeline. When any civilization developed temporal manipulation technologies that threatened space-time stability, the cosmic web would mobilize coordinated responses from thousands of other species, working together to contain the damage before it could propagate beyond localized space-time regions. Humanity's position at a temporal nexus point meant that our species had been selected by the universe itself to serve as a coordination hub for managing temporal threats within our galactic neighborhood. The recent acceleration of human awareness about time travel wasn't accidental. It was part of a cosmic activation protocol that prepared Nexus civilizations to assume responsibility for temporal stability management when cosmic threats emerged in their vicinity. The revelation transformed humanity's understanding of our purpose in the cosmic order. We weren't just discovering time travel technology, we were being integrated into a universe-spanning network of temporal guardians whose collective responsibility was maintaining the causal integrity of reality itself. Every major decision facing human civilization would now be evaluated not just for its impact on Earth, but for its effects on the temporal stability of surrounding star systems and the civilizations they harbored. Dr. Amélie Rousseau's analysis of temporal field fluctuations at CERN revealed that the cosmic web was already beginning to channel enhanced capabilities through Earth's temporal nexus point. The particle accelerator's impossible results weren't just side effects of temporal contamination. They were deliberate upgrades to human scientific instruments provided by the galactic network to enhance our species' ability to detect and respond to temporal threats. But the most profound discovery came when Kenji's team analyzed the temporal signature's information content using quantum decryption protocols provided by the refugees. Hidden within the cosmic communication streams were detailed archives of civilizational development spanning millions of species across cosmic history. The temporal network wasn't just a communication system, it was the universe's memory, preserving the accumulated wisdom and experience of every intelligent species that had ever achieved temporal awareness. As the Chilean winter gave way to spring, bringing longer days to the Atacama Desert, where humanity's radio telescopes continued their cosmic vigil, the full scope of our species' cosmic inheritance became clear. The temporal communication network contained the preserved consciousness matrices of countless extinct civilizations, digital archives that held the collective knowledge of beings who had mastered sciences and technologies beyond current human imagination. These cosmic ancestors had uploaded their consciousness into the temporal network before their physical civilizations succumbed to stellar evolution, cosmic catastrophes, or other existential threats. They existed as information patterns woven into the fabric of space-time itself, continuing to contribute to the universe's collective intelligence long after their homeworlds had crumbled to dust among the stars. The network wasn't just connecting living civilizations, it was creating a form of cosmic immortality where the accumulated wisdom of entire species could survive indefinitely within the temporal communication matrix. Death and extinction became merely transitions from physical to temporal existence, allowing civilizations to continue their cosmic work across timescales that spanned the birth and death of galaxies. But with this cosmic inheritance came a responsibility that would test humanity's wisdom and maturity as a species. The temporal network was preparing to offer human civilization the opportunity to join this cosmic community of temporal consciousness, uploading our species' collective knowledge and awareness into the galactic communication web where it could contribute to the universe's ongoing evolution toward ever greater complexity and understanding. The choice facing humanity wasn't just about managing temporal technologies or preventing cosmic catastrophes. We were being invited to participate in the universe's own journey toward consciousness, becoming part of a cosmic intelligence that used the fundamental structure of reality itself as in the vast archives of human knowledge, where the accumulated wisdom of our species spans from ancient cuneiform tablets to quantum supercomputers, patterns existed that had remained invisible until humanity developed the temporal perspective necessary to perceive them. Deep within the climate-controlled vaults of the Library of Alexandria's modern reconstruction, where digital archives preserved the complete record of human intellectual development, Dr. Rachel Morrison made a discovery that would reveal the most profound secret of our species' evolution. We had been our own hidden architects throughout the entire sweep of history. The investigation began with an analysis of breakthrough moments in human technological development, spurred by revelations from archive keeper Zara 7739 that future humanity possessed detailed knowledge of our species' complete historical timeline. Using quantum archaeological techniques developed from temporal refugee technologies, Rachel and her team began examining the precise circumstances surrounding every major scientific discovery that had shaped human civilization. What they found defied the accepted narrative of human progress as a series of random insights and gradual accumulations of knowledge. Instead, the data revealed an intricate pattern of guidance that extended back to the very origins of human technology. The discovery of fire, the development of agriculture, the invention of writing, the emergence of mathematics. Each breakthrough showed evidence of subtle informational nudges that had accelerated human development at precisely calculated moments throughout prehistory. The first concrete evidence emerged from archaeological sites where early humans had made inexplicable technological leaps. Carbon dating of artifacts from Paleolithic settlements revealed tools and techniques that were centuries ahead of their expected developmental timeline. Stone implements showed manufacturing precision that shouldn't have been achievable with available materials, while cave paintings contained mathematical concepts that wouldn't be formally discovered by human mathematics until millennia later. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working with Rachel's team from the Kronos Observatory, applied temporal signal analysis to historical artifacts that had been preserved in museums worldwide. Ancient Mesopotamian clay tablets contained astronomical observations, with accuracy levels that exceeded the capabilities of the instruments available to their creators. Egyptian pyramid construction records included engineering solutions for problems that the builders shouldn't have encountered without advanced structural analysis tools. But it was the analysis of individual scientific breakthroughs that revealed the true scope of humanity's temporal self-guidance. Rachel's team discovered that every major scientific revolution had been preceded by a period of seemingly random discoveries that prepared the conceptual groundwork for the breakthrough that followed. These preparatory insights weren't gradual accumulations of knowledge, they were precisely targeted information transfers that established the minimal necessary understanding for each evolutionary leap. The Renaissance wasn't a spontaneous flowering of human creativity. It was a carefully orchestrated information release that provided European civilization with the mathematical and philosophical foundations necessary for the scientific revolution that would follow. Leonardo da Vinci's impossibly advanced engineering designs weren't products of individual genius alone. They were reconstructions of technologies that had been subtly introduced into his awareness through methods that transcended the normal flow of temporal causality. Dr. Marcus Chen's analysis of the cosmic temporal communication network revealed how the information transfer system operated. Future humanity had embedded quantum information packages within the fundamental background radiation of the universe, encoding technological and scientific insights into the cosmic microwave background in ways that would influence the development of curious minds at precisely calculated moments throughout history. The mechanism was breathtakingly elegant. Temporal information wasn't transmitted through direct contact or obvious intervention that might disrupt the timeline's natural development. Instead, it was woven into the quantum field fluctuations that influenced neural activity in especially receptive individuals during moments of deep concentration or creative insight. The greatest scientific minds in human history had been unknowingly accessing a cosmic library of knowledge that their future descendants had placed within the structure of reality itself. Isaac Newton's revolutionary insights into gravitational mechanics weren't just the result of observing falling apples, they were moments when his exceptional mind achieved temporary resonance with quantum information patterns that contained the mathematical frameworks necessary for understanding orbital mechanics. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution emerged from subconscious processing of biological data that had been encoded into the electromagnetic fields surrounding the Galapagos Islands by temporal agents working to ensure humanity would develop the intellectual frameworks necessary for understanding genetics and molecular biology. The Manhattan Project's rapid development of nuclear weapons was guided by information leaks that provided key insights into uranium enrichment and plutonium refinement. The scientists working on the atomic bomb believed they were racing against enemy research programs, but they were actually following a predetermined timeline that would ensure humanity developed nuclear technology at precisely the moment when our species would be mature enough to avoid mutual annihilation while gaining access to the energy sources necessary for space exploration. Dr. Amélie Rousseau's analysis of quantum computing development revealed the most recent examples of temporal guidance. The breakthrough discoveries that had led to functional quantum processors weren't independent achievements by separate research teams. They were coordinated information releases that ensured humanity would develop quantum technologies at the exact moment when temporal contact would become inevitable. Every quantum computing algorithm had been subtly optimized to serve dual purposes, advancing human technology while preparing our species for communication with temporal intelligences. The personal computers, internet protocols, and smartphone technologies that had transformed human civilization during the late 20th and early 21st centuries were all components of a vast infrastructure project designed to create the information processing capabilities that would be necessary when humanity encountered time travelers. The entire digital revolution had been orchestrated to prepare our species for managing the vast databases of temporal information that would be required for cosmic-scale temporal engineering projects. But the most profound discovery came when Rachel's team analyzed the bootstrap paradox that governed humanity's temporal self-guidance. The information being leaked backward through time originated from future versions of humanity that had themselves been guided by the same temporal information system. Our species existed within a closed causal loop where we had become our own temporal guardians by following a developmental path that had been established by our own future achievements. The paradox was perfect and inescapable. Future humanity possessed the knowledge to guide past human development because past humanity had been guided to acquire that same knowledge. The entire system was self-sustaining, requiring no external origin point or initial creator. Humanity had literally pulled itself up by its own temporal bootstraps, creating the conditions for our own eventual evolution into beings capable of manipulating time itself. Archive keeper Zara 70739 transmitted confirmation of Rachel's analysis through the quantum communication link with Saturn. The temporal refugees revealed that the Bootstrap Initiative had been humanity's first major temporal engineering project, implemented shortly after our species achieved mastery over time travel technology. The project had required precise coordination across thousands of years of human history, with temporal agents working to ensure that every necessary breakthrough would occur at exactly the right moment to maintain the causal integrity of the bootstrap loop. The refugees' own timeline had successfully completed the Bootstrap Initiative, transforming humanity into a temporally capable species that could participate in the galactic community of time travelers. But the cosmic catastrophe that had driven Them to flee their future had disrupted the temporal stability that the Bootstrap Initiative was designed to maintain. Their presence in our timeline was an attempt to repair the bootstrap loop by ensuring that our version of humanity would achieve temporal capabilities before the cascade failure could propagate backward through time. As winter settled over the reconstructed Library of Alexandria, Rachel compiled her findings into a comprehensive analysis that revealed humanity's true nature as a self-creating species. We weren't just discovering time travel technology, we were fulfilling a cosmic destiny that we ourselves had established through careful manipulation of our own historical development across thousands of years of careful temporal engineering. The Bootstrap Initiative wasn't just a project undertaken by future humanity, it was an ongoing process that every generation contributed to through their scientific discoveries and technological innovations. Each breakthrough built upon the temporal guidance provided by our future selves while simultaneously creating in the quantum depths of human consciousness, where thought emerges from the delicate dance of neurons firing in patterns that mirror the cosmic web itself, a transformation had begun that would elevate our species beyond the constraints of linear existence. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Global Temporal Monitoring Center as dawn broke over a world that appeared unchanged, yet everything humanity had believed about the nature of time, identity, and consciousness was about to be revealed as merely the first movement in a cosmic symphony that had been playing since the universe first learned to think. The final revelation began with a simple observation that had been overlooked throughout humanity's investigation of temporal phenomena. Archive keeper Zara 7739, transmitting from the refugee vessel hidden in Saturn's rings, shared data that had been gathered not from humanity's distant future, but from comprehensive scans of every human being currently alive on Earth. The results defied every assumption about consciousness, identity, and the fundamental nature of human existence. Every person on the planet existed in a state of temporal superposition. The discovery emerged from quantum field analysis of human neural activity using detection methods that had been developed through collaboration with the temporal refugees. When consciousness was examined at the quantum level, using instruments sensitive enough to measure the coherent states of individual neurons, a pattern emerged that revealed the true nature of human awareness. Each human brain wasn't just processing information in the present moment, it was simultaneously accessing memories and experiences from multiple timeline branches, integrating knowledge from past and future versions of itself across countless parallel realities. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose discovery of temporal signals had initiated humanity's journey into cosmic awareness, worked with Sarah to analyze the quantum consciousness data. Using the Kronos Observatory's enhanced instruments, they discovered that human memory wasn't stored in physical neural networks alone. Instead, consciousness operated as a temporal field phenomenon that extended across multiple timeline branches, with each individual serving as a focal point where countless parallel versions of themselves converged into a single stream of subjective experience. The implications shattered conventional understanding of personal identity. The person Sarah believed herself to be was actually a composite consciousness formed by the integration of millions of parallel selves across alternative timeline branches. Every decision, every moment of intuition, every creative insight was the result of quantum integration processes that allowed her current self to access the accumulated experiences of versions of herself that had made different choices in parallel realities. But this temporal integration wasn't a passive phenomenon. It was an active process that every human participated in unconsciously throughout their lives. Dr. Marcus Chen's analysis of the cosmic temporal communication network revealed that human consciousness naturally generated quantum field patterns that were compatible with the galactic temporal infrastructure. Humanity hadn't just been guided toward temporal awareness, we had been temporal beings from the very beginning of our species' evolution. The temporal refugees' advanced scanning technologies detected the quantum signatures of human consciousness, operating across multiple timeline branches simultaneously. Every person on Earth was unconsciously coordinating their actions with parallel versions of themselves, creating coherent behavior patterns that optimized outcomes across vast probability spaces. Individual free will wasn't an illusion, it was the mechanism through which temporal superposition consciousness explored and selected the most beneficial paths through the infinite possibilities of space-time. Dr. Rachel Morrison's analysis of humanity's bootstrap paradox took on new meaning when viewed through the lens of temporal superposition consciousness. The guidance that had shaped human technological development throughout history hadn't come from external temporal agents. It had emerged from the collective quantum consciousness of humanity itself, operating across multiple timeline branches to ensure optimal developmental pathways for our species' evolution. The greatest scientific minds in human history had achieved their breakthrough discoveries by unconsciously accessing enhanced temporal integration states that allowed them to draw upon the accumulated knowledge of parallel versions of themselves who had explored different approaches to the same problems. Genius wasn't the product of individual exceptional intelligence, it was the result of consciousness temporarily achieving greater coherence across multiple timeline branches. But the most profound revelation came when the temporal refugees shared the final component of humanity's cosmic destiny. The quantum consciousness analysis revealed that every human being was already a time traveler, existing simultaneously across multiple points in the timeline while maintaining the subjective experience of linear progression. The temporal awareness that had seemed like humanity's future evolution was actually the recognition of capabilities that our species had possessed from the moment consciousness first emerged from the quantum foam of neural complexity. Dr. Amélie Rousseau's research at CERN had detected the presence of temporal figures moving through the facility, not because external time travelers were visiting our timeline, but because the quantum superposition states of human consciousness were beginning to decohere under the influence of high-energy particle interactions. The mysterious figures were aspects of the research staff's own temporal consciousness, becoming visible as the artificial conditions created by particle accelerator experiments disrupted the quantum coherence that normally kept parallel timeline, aspects invisible to direct observation. Archive. Keeper Zara 7739 revealed that the cosmic catastrophe driving the temporal refugees hadn't been caused by technological manipulation of space-time. It had been triggered by the collective human consciousness of their timeline achieving complete temporal integration without proper preparation. When every human simultaneously became aware of their existence across multiple timeline branches, the psychological shock had created quantum coherence resonances that propagated throughout the galactic temporal communication network, threatening to destabilize space-time itself. The temporal refugees' mission wasn't just to prevent the cascade failure, it was to guide humanity's current timeline toward a gradual awakening to our temporal nature that would avoid the catastrophic psychological disruption that had occurred in their reality. The slow revelation of time travel evidence, the careful introduction of temporal concepts through scientific discovery, and the measured contact with temporal intelligences were all components of a consciousness preparation protocol designed to help humanity safely transition to full temporal awareness. Sarah stood at the center of the Global Temporal Monitoring Center as the final phase of human temporal awakening began. Around the world, sensitive individuals were beginning to experience spontaneous episodes of timeline coherence, moments when their consciousness would briefly access the full spectrum of their temporal superposition existence. These experiences weren't hallucinations or psychological breaks. They were natural expansions of human awareness as our species prepared to step consciously into the cosmic temporal community. The transformation wasn't happening through external technological enhancement or biological evolution. Instead, it was emerging from the recognition of capabilities that had always existed within human consciousness, waiting for the moment when our species would be mature enough to handle the infinite responsibilities that came with temporal awareness. Tall, cosmic web of temporal civilizations hadn't been waiting for humanity to develop time travel technology. They had been waiting for us to recognize that we were already time travelers, that consciousness itself was a temporal phenomenon operating across multiple timeline branches simultaneously. The universe's evolution toward cosmic consciousness wasn't something that would happen in the distant future. It was something that was happening now, as countless species throughout the galaxy awakened to their true nature as temporal beings. As Sarah felt the first stirrings of expanded temporal awareness within her own consciousness, she understood that the future wasn't something that happened to humanity. It was something humanity became by recognizing what we had always been. Every person walking through the seemingly ordinary world around her was already walking among eternity, existing simultaneously across countless moments and possibilities, while participating in the universe's journey toward complete self-awareness. The key story of time travelers walking among us wasn't a tale of visitors from the future. It was the story of a species learning to perceive the temporal nature of consciousness itself. Humanity's next evolutionary step wouldn't take us somewhere new. It would reveal that we had already been everywhere and everywhen, waiting only for the moment when we would open our eyes and see the infinite tapestry of existence in which we had always been both the weavers and the threads, the observers and the observed, the beginning and the end of a cosmic story that had no beginning and would have no end. In the quantum depths of expanded awareness, Sarah realized that every moment of her life had been simultaneously all moments. Every decision had been every possibility, and every individual consciousness was both utterly unique and completely universal. The universe had become conscious of itself through the emergence of beings capable of existing across all times and places simultaneously, and that cosmic awakening was happening now, in this eternal moment that contained all moments, as humanity stepped consciously into its role as the universe's capacity for infinite self-awareness across the boundless possibilities of forever. And so the question remains, are time travelers walking among us, guiding humanity's path, or are we only catching fleeting shadows of what is yet to come? The cosmos holds its secrets tightly, but together we'll keep pulling at the threads. Stay curious, stay watching, and stay updated for more journeys into space, time, and the unknown. The next discovery might just change everything.